They said Route 66 was quiet that day, but those who were there remember the sound. Engines growling like thunder, boots heavy enough to shake the ground. 50 bikes lined up outside a rusted diner called Ruby's Stop. Inside, Elena Brooks, a waitress with tired eyes and a kind heart, poured coffee for strangers like it was the only peace left in the world. She didn't know that within the next 10 minutes, her name would burn across every social feed in America. A TikTok star walked in loud, arrogant, camera rolling. He came for views, for humiliation, for cheap fame. He spat on her apron, laughed, and told his audience, "This is what small-town losers look like." What he didn't know was that 50 men in leather vests, patched with skulls, fire, and thunder, were sitting just a few feet away. Ryder Grave Lawson, Diesel Jack, Phantom Cruise, Blade Carter, and Ghost. Men feared by everyone, loyal to one code: respect the ones who earn it. And when Elena wiped her apron with trembling hands, the angels of Route 66 stood up, and Hell rode with them. Before we get into this, tell me, where are you watching this from? Comment your city below. Hit that subscribe button and like the video. Now let's rewind to how this moment started. The heat on Route 66 didn't just sit, it pressed. It wrapped around a small Arizona town like a slow-burning fever, shimmering across the cracked highway where dreams want to dry out and die. And right in the middle of that endless road, with a neon sign that buzzed like it was running out of hope, stood a diner called Ruby's Stop. Inside, Elena Howard moved between tables like a quiet rhythm the world forgot to hear. 23, thin from long shifts, strong from longer days. Her ponytail swayed as she refilled coffee cups, her soft, "You need a warm-up, sweetheart?" carrying more comfort than the caffeine itself. Elena wasn't from money, she was from fight. Her father had built houses until the day his lungs gave out. Her mother had worked at Ruby's before her, until the cancer bills swallowed what little they had left. Now, Elena worked both their debts off one cup at a time. She could have left. Plenty of people told her so. But kindness kept her here. And kindness, in a town that had forgotten it, was a dangerous thing. The bell over the door jingled. Engines outside, low, guttural, rolling like thunder about to break, cut off one by one. Heads turned. Conversation stalled. Through the glass, the Iron Vultures Motorcycle Club rolled in. 50 bikes in a perfect line, metal glinting under the merciless sun. Their patches flashed gunmetal and crimson, the vulture emblem glaring like a warning to anyone foolish enough to look twice. When they entered, they didn't speak at first. Just boots and leather and presents. People at the counter froze. A couple tourists whispered, eyes wide. But Elena, she smiled. "Afternoon, fellas." The usual. At that, the silence broke. Ryder Grave Lawson, their president, gave a small nod. The scar along his jaw caught the light. "Afternoon, Miss Howard," he rumbled. "You're keeping this place alive, huh?" She grinned. "Trying my best." Diesel Jack, the vice president, leaned on the counter. "Best coffee on this stretch of road," he said, and meant it. The Iron Vultures always sat in the same booth. Back corner, eyes to the door, engines still cooling outside. They weren't the kind of men you invited trouble around. But Elena never treated them like shadows. She treated them like people. And that's why they came back. For the coffee, sure. But mostly for her. The day passed in waves of heat. Elena worked through it with her steady rhythm, poor, wipe smile. The jukebox whispered old country songs that smelled of dust and heartbreak. When the lunch rush faded, Grave called her over. "You ever take a day off?" he asked. She laughed. "You offering to cover my shift? Can't flip a burger to save my life." "Then no, I can't afford to." Grave studied her for a long second, eyes softening just slightly. "Your mama holding up." Elena's smile faltered, the smallest crack in her armor. "Some days better than others." "I'm saving up for her next treatment." Diesel shifted in his seat. Phantom, Blade, and Ghost listened quietly, the way men do when they don't want to interrupt truth. Grave reached into his vest, pulled out a folded 20, and slid it across the counter. "For the tip jar," he said. She tried to refuse. "You already tipped too much." He raised an eyebrow. "You gonna argue with 50 men who could level this town?" That made her laugh again, the sound soft but real. Out on the highway, the wind changed. A dust storm far off twisted across the desert like smoke. The vultures would ride before sunset, heading east toward Dallas. But for now, they lingered, talking in low tones about routes, fuel, and brotherhood. Elena caught pieces of their words and liked the way they sounded. Loyalty, honor code. When she looked at them, she didn't see danger. She saw men who had been broken by life and put back together with steel and scars. And maybe that's why, when a black Escalade slowed outside, bass thumping and laughter spilling out, Elena didn't think twice. She just grabbed menus and went to greet the newcomers. She didn't see the phone lights flashing or the camera hidden behind tinted shades. She didn't know that the boy stepping out, designer sneakers, diamond chain, ego louder than the music, was Tanner Cole, one of the biggest TikTok names in the country. She didn't know that he wasn't there for food. He was there for content. Inside the diner, the vultures watched as the group swaggered in, filming the walls, pointing at the rusted jukebox and peeling wallpaper. Bro, one of them snickered. This place is straight out of 1950. Tanner grinned at the camera. Perfect. Welcome to middle of nowhere America, folks. Let's see how they handle celebrity service. Elena met them with that same easy smile, menus in hand. Welcome to Ruby's stop. Table for 4. Tanner barely glanced up. Sure, sweetheart. We'll need the best table. You know who I am. She blinked. No, sir, but I'll get you the cleanest booth we have. The bikers exchanged glances, silent. Diesel's jaw flexed. Blade's knuckles tapped the table once. Grave didn't move. Not yet. Because trouble had a smell, and it had just walked in wearing cologne and entitlement. The TikTokers sat, phones propped up, laughter echoing. And somewhere between that laughter and the sound of Elena pouring coffee, something dangerous shifted in the air. The vultures felt it first. Respect was about to be tested. And on Route 66, under that ruthless sun, that never ended well for the man who failed the test. The air thickened like the whole diner was holding its breath. Elena moved between tables, tray balanced, smile steady. The laughter behind her grew louder, meaner, the kind that didn't laugh with anyone, only at them. Tanner leaned toward his camera. Watch this chat, he whispered. We're about to rate this dump's 5-star service. The comment stream rolled fast. Laughing emojis, clapping hands, fire symbols. Someone wrote, make the waitress cry. He smirked. Graves' eyes flicked toward Diesel. Diesel didn't speak, but the look he gave said everything. Not yet. Elena came back with their orders, burgers, fries, milkshakes. She placed each plate down gently, the way she always did, as if every meal mattered. Tanner looked at his burger, scrunching his face like it had personally insulted him. This looks like garbage, he said loudly. Elena blinked, startled but still calm. I'm sorry, sir. I can have the kitchen remake it for you. The live stream comments poured in. She's cute. Make her mad. Do the food flip prank. Tanner grinned at the camera. You guys ready for this? He whispered. His friends laughed, filming her face. One whispered, Bro, do it. Make it viral. And Tanner did. He leaned back, looked at the camera, and spat right on her apron. The sound, wet, sharp, humiliating, cut through the diner. Everything stopped. The jukebox fell silent mid-song. A fork clattered from someone's hand. Elena stood there, eyes wide, hands trembling just slightly. For a moment, no one breathed. She didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't even step back. She just whispered, voice breaking. I'm sorry, sir. That single sentence hit the room harder than a scream ever could. Behind her, the iron vultures moved. Diesel's fist curled. Blade's jaw twitched. Phantom's boot tapped once against the tile, slow and deliberate, the calm before thunder. And then Graves stood. The sound of his chair scraping back was heavier than words. It dragged across the floor like judgment itself. Every head turned. Grave walked forward, his boots steady, shadow stretching long across the diner floor. The vultures followed. Not a word, not a sound, just leather, steel, and purpose. Tanner's friends froze. One tried to hide his phone. Another kept filming until Ghost reached over and pressed a single finger on the lens. Turn it off, he said. His voice was quiet, too quiet, the kind that made men obey. Tanner forced a laugh, shaky, desperate. Hey, it's just a prank, bro. Graves stopped beside his table. The space between them felt electric, dangerous, holy. He leaned down until Tanner could see the scar across his jaw, the cold fury in his eyes. You think that's funny? Tanner swallowed. We were just messing around. Graves' voice dropped lower. That woman works harder in one day than you've worked in your life. Silence. The kind that burned. The iron vultures closed in, a wall of heat and breathing and unspoken threat. Blade cracked his neck. Say sorry, he growled. Tanner's voice broke. I didn't mean. Graves straightened. Come again. You don't spit on kindness, he said. Not here. Not anywhere. He turned to Diesel. Outside. The bikers didn't drag Tanner. They didn't touch him. They just looked at him, 50 men, eyes cold, jaws set, and he walked. Because what else could he do? Phones turned off. The live stream ended. The audience vanished. Outside, the sky was bruised with sunset. Harleys lined a road, engines rumbling low like distant thunder. Tanner's friends followed, wide-eyed and pale. Graves stood before them, wind lifting the dust around his boots. You'll be back tomorrow, he said. 7 a.m. sharp. Tanner blinked. Why? You're going to clean this place, Graves said. You're going to serve food, wash dishes, pour coffee the right way. You're going to learn what respect means. Tanner's mouth opened, but no sound came. Graves leaned in close. You disrespected someone we call family. Around here, that's the one mistake you don't make twice. He turned to his men. Mount up. Engines roared to life. One by one, the sound rising until the desert itself seemed to shake. 50 iron vultures, chrome flashing red against the dusk, thundered down Route 66 as the dust swallowed them whole. Inside, Elena still stood by the counter, wiping at her apron with quiet hands. She didn't know what had been said outside. She didn't know tomorrow would change everything. But the vultures did, because they'd seen 1,000 kinds of cruelty in their lives. But what they saw that day wasn't cruelty. It was a weakness. And for the first time in Tanner Cole's life, someone was about to teach him the difference. The desert never keeps secrets. By dawn, what happened inside Ruby's stop had already blown across Route 66 like wildfire. Every phone that had been filming, every viewer who'd been watching Tanner Cole's prank, every clip that was screen recorded was now everywhere. Influencer humiliated waitress. TikTok star spits on working woman. The hashtags burned through the internet like gasoline. But inside the diner, the world was quiet. Elena unlocked the door at sunrise. The air still smelled of dust and rain that never came. She swept the floor in silence, humming a half-song her mother used to hum when things felt too heavy. Then she heard it, the low thunder of engines. 50 Harleys again. They didn't come rumbling and loud like the night before. This time, they idled down the road, slow and measured like a heartbeat. And behind them, a black Escalade. It pulled in crooked, tires crunching the gravel. 4 young men stepped out, the same ones who had laughed while millions watched. They weren't filming now. No music. No smugness. Just 4 faces drained of sleep and pride. Tanner's hand shook as he adjusted his sunglasses, though there was no sun yet. Graves stepped off his bike. The air seemed to bend around him. Morning, boys, he said. Still think it was funny? Tanner swallowed. No, sir. Good. Aprons are inside. The iron vultures parked their bikes in a perfect line and took seats on the curb, arms crossed, watching. There was no laughter, no satisfaction, just the silent judgment of men who'd seen worse and expected better. Inside, Elena stared when Tanner walked through the door. He couldn't meet her eyes. He fumbled with the strings of the white apron Grave had thrown him. You don't have to, she began. Grave cut her off gently. He does. Diesel Jack leaned against the counter. Respect ain't a word. It's a way of breathing. He forgot how. We're going to remind him. Elena looked from one face to another. For a second, she wanted to cry, not from fear, but from the strange tenderness of it. These men, with their scars and leather and thunder, were standing up for something pure. The day stretched long. Tanner scrubbed dishes until his fingers went raw. His friends carried boxes, mopped floors, and served coffee to truckers who smirked into their mugs. Every time Tanner's reflection caught his eye in the window, he saw the headlines again. The screenshots. The comments. Cancel him. He got what he deserved. Respect the working class. His phone vibrated constantly in his pocket, but he didn't touch it. Elena moved through the diner like sunlight, quiet, consistent, forgiving. She spoke to him only when she needed to. "You missed a spot, Tanner." Or, "Table three's ready." Never cruel. Never condescending. That hurt more than anger would have. At noon, the bell above the door rang and a family walked in, a mother, father, and a little boy in a faded Superman shirt. The boy pointed at Tanner, whispering, "Mommy, that's the bad man from the phone." Tanner's stomach twisted. The woman hushed her son, embarrassed, but the words hung in the air. Grave watched from his booth. "Keep going," he murmured. Work through it.by evening. The light had softened to gold again. Elena wiped down the counter, glancing at Tanner where he stood, hair damp with sweat, sleeves rolled up, still washing dishes. He caught her look and froze. "Why aren't you yelling at me?" he asked suddenly. She paused. "Would it make you change faster?" He shook his head. "No." "Then I won't waste my breath." For the first time all day, she smiled, not with pity, but with peace. "Just do better next time, Tanner." That's all anyone can do. Something cracked in his chest then. Not a sound, just the quiet realization that he'd spent his whole life chasing applause from strangers who didn't care if he was kind. Outside, the bikers began to leave one by one, engines roaring to life. The sun bled red across the horizon, painting the diner windows in firelight. Grave lingered in the doorway, helmet under his arm. "You did good today," he said. "You keep showing up like that. Maybe the world will remember the man you could have been." Tanner met his eyes. "Do you think they'll forgive me?" "Online." Grave's mouth twitched into something like a smirk. "Online don't matter. That waitress does." Then he turned, and the roar of his Harley swallowed the words. When the last bike vanished down the road, the silence felt heavy again, but this time, not with shame, with possibility. Tanner untied his apron. His hands were blistered, his back ached, but something in him was lighter. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and deleted the app. Every video, every comment, every follower, gone. He stepped outside into the cooling night. Elena was sitting on the diner steps, a mug of coffee cradled in her hands. She didn't look up when he sat beside her. For a long while, they said nothing. The sky stretched wide and bruised above them, the last rays of sunlight sinking behind the horizon. Finally, Tanner spoke. His voice was rough, unsteady. "I thought being seen was the same thing as being somebody." Elena nodded. "A lot of people do." He looked down at his hands, cracked, reddened, honest. "Guess I was wrong." She smiled, small but real. "Guess you get to start over." The neon sign above them buzzed weakly to life. For the first time since the whole world saw him as a villain, Tanner Cole felt something close to peace. And out on the highway, far away, the faint thunder of Harleys rolled through the night, a reminder that justice didn't always wear a badge, and mercy didn't always come from angels with wings. Sometimes it came from men in leather, and a woman strong enough to stay kind. The next morning, the sun rose over Route 66 like it was forgiving the world for yesterday. Its light crawled across the cracked asphalt, over the worn red paint of Ruby's stop, and into the small diner where Elena Howard stood refilling salt shakers in the stillness before the day began. The bell over the door jingled softly. For a moment, she thought it might be another early trucker or one of the vultures back for coffee. But it was Tanner. He looked different. No designer shirt this time, just a plain gray hoodie, jeans smudged with grease from the day before. The expensive cologne was gone, replaced by soap and the smell of dust. He held his cap in both hands, twisting it nervously. "Morning," Elena said. Her voice was even cautious but not cold. "Morning," Tanner murmured. I wasn't sure if I should come back." "You gave your word to Grave," she said simply. "He keeps track of promises." Tanner nodded, almost smiling. "Yeah, I figured." Outside, the steady growl of engines rose. 50 Harleys appeared in the distance, sunlight flashing off chrome. The iron vultures were back, right on time. They parked in a single line, engines rumbling like a choir of thunder. Ryder Grave Lawson led the way inside, followed by Dieseljack, Phantom, Blade, and Ghost. They filled the diner like a tide, commanding space without asking for it. "Morning, Miss Howard," Grave greeted. His tone was gentler than usual. "Morning, boys," she replied, pouring them coffee as naturally as if they'd never left. When she reached Blade, he gave Tanner a long, measured look. "Didn't think we'd see you again." Tanner didn't flinch. "Didn't think I deserved to," he said quietly. The answer seemed to please Blade, because he only grunted and took his cup. Work began again. Tanner scrubbed the floor, wiped tables, learned to carry plates without dropping them. Diesel taught him how to pour coffee the way truckers liked it, black as midnight, no questions asked. Phantom showed him how to fix a leaky faucet under the sink, laughing when Tanner smacked his head on the counter. Even Ghost, silent as a shadow, offered a rare nod of approval when the boy didn't complain. Every hour chipped away at what Tanner used to be. The cameras, the followers, the noise. It all seemed smaller now, far away, almost childish. Here, respect wasn't something you demanded. It was something you earned with work, with silence, with decency. By noon, the diner was busy again. Locals had come to see if the story was true. The influencer who insulted a waitress now working for her. Whispers filled the booths. Phones tried to snap pictures, but Graves' glare made them disappear quickly. The Iron Vultures protected privacy the same way they protected family. Fiercely, a trucker at the counter nudged Tanner when Elena passed by. "Son, you better thank the Lord she's got a forgiving heart," the man said. Tanner's throat tightened. "I already have." Later, when the rush faded, Elena stepped outside for a breath of air. The sun hung low, turning everything gold. The sound of wind across the empty highway felt like peace and memory all at once. She didn't hear Tanner approach until he spoke. "My mom used to work in a diner like this," he said. Elena turned. "Yeah. She raised me alone. Worked nights, doubled shifts. I guess I forgot what that looked like." His voice cracked. Or maybe I just didn't want to remember. For a long moment, they stood in silence, hummed the bikes in the background like a heartbeat. "She'd be proud you remembered now," Elena said softly. He shook his head. "Not of what I did." "Maybe not," she admitted. "But maybe of what you're trying to do now." Behind them, the door creaked open. Grave leaned against the frame, listening but not interrupting. When Tanner noticed, he straightened. "You done for today?" Grave asked. "Yes, sir." "Good. Then listen close." The old biker's voice carried the weight of desert wind and miles of road. "You can't undo what you did," he said. "But you can decide what kind of man walks away from it." Tanner met his eyes. "I want to be better." "Then start small," Grave said. "Show up tomorrow. Show her you mean it." He nodded toward Elena. She blinked back sudden tears she hadn't expected. When the vultures finally rode off, the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky streaked in crimson. Elena stood at the window, watching their taillights fade into the dust. Tanner stayed to sweep the floor one last time. When he finished, he left a folded napkin by the register. On it, in uneven handwriting, were 3 words. "Thank you, ma'am." She found it after he left. For some reason, she kept it. Tucked it inside the drawer beneath the till, beside the small stack of bills she was saving for her mother's medicine. Outside, the night deepened, and somewhere far down the road, the Harleys roared again. A reminder that goodness still had guardians, and redemption was never too far gone for anyone brave enough to earn it. By the 3rd morning, the story had gone everywhere. Clips of Tanner's humiliation looped on every feed. His smirk, the spit, Elena's trembling hands. Millions watched, judged, and moved on, but Tanner couldn't. He scrolled through his phone behind a diner, hand shaking. "You're trash. Fire him. Cancel the rich brat." Every comment was a punch, but the worst ones were the ones that were right. He locked the screen and stared at the desert stretching forever. Out here, nothing cared who you were. The sun burned the same for saints and sinners. Inside, the Iron Vultures drank coffee like they had for years, quiet, unbothered. Graves' voice rumbled low, talking to Diesel about a charity ride next month. The normalcy of it hurt Tanner more than the hate online. He walked back in, shoulders heavy. "Grave," he said softly, "they hate me. The whole world does." Grave looked up, calm as stone. "Then stop trying to talk to the whole world. Start talking to one person. Start with her." Elena was wiping down a booth, humming the same song her mother used to hum. When she saw him, she paused but didn't turn away. "I shouldn't be here," Tanner said. I've ruined everything. She set the cloth down. Then fix what you can. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. Honest. The kind of tired that still believed people could be better, even if they rarely were. He swallowed hard. Oh, everyone's seen it. That video will never die. Maybe not, she said. But it doesn't get to define you unless you keep being that person. Her words landed like a slow heartbeat, painful, steady, alive. That afternoon, he worked until his hands blistered again. No cameras, no jokes, just effort. When the floor gleamed and the dishes were done, he stepped outside. The horizon was bleeding orange. Harleys glinted in the distance, the club preparing to ride. Grave found him leaning against the wall. You good? He asked. Tanner let out a shaky laugh. Define good. Grave took a drag from his cigarette, exhaled slow. Good's when you stop running from the mirror. Tanner looked down at his phone. He deleted every app except the camera. I don't even know who I am without all that. Then it's time to find out, Grave said. You got two choices now. Let guilt rot you, or let it grow you. He dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his boot, and walked away. The engines came alive, 50 at once, roaring against the fading sun. Tanner stood there long after they disappeared, the echo of thunder fading into silence. Later that night, the diner was closed, the neon sign buzzing faintly in the dark. Elena sat alone on the steps, staring at the stars, tiny holes poked in the black sky. She didn't hear Tanner until he spoke. I wanted to say thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not treating me like I'm the worst thing I've ever done. She smiled sadly. Everyone's done something they wish they could take back. The trick is to live so the next thing you do matters more. He sat beside her. They listened to the night, coyotes far off, the hum of power lines, the ghost of engines on the highway. I keep thinking about what it felt like when I did it, he whispered. How easy it was to be cruel. How normal it felt. I don't ever want to feel that again. Then don't, she said simply. You get to choose. He turned to her, eyes wet in the dim light. Why are you being kind to me? She looked back at him, steady. Because someone has to be. For a moment, neither spoke. The desert wind brushed past them, carrying the faint scent of rain that would never fall. Tanner glanced toward the highway, where the vultures had vanished hours ago. Do you think they'll ever see me as more than the kid who messed up? Elena took a slow breath. Maybe not. But they'll remember you kept showing up. That counts for something. He nodded, blinking hard. Then I'll keep showing up. When he finally left, the road was empty, moonlight spilling across the asphalt. His reflection flashed in every dark window. Different now, smaller, but somehow real. Inside the diner, Elena locked the door and leaned against it, exhaling. For the first time since the humiliation, her hands weren't shaking. Out there in the darkness, redemption was starting its slow crawl back toward the light. And somewhere beyond the horizon, 50 Harleys rolled through the night, guardians of a lesson learned the hard way. Respect, dignity, and the power of one quiet woman who refused to answer cruelty with hate. Morning came softly over Route 66, painting the horizon in gold and rust. The first thing Elena noticed when she stepped outside was the calm. No rumbling engines. No black SUVs. Just the sound of wind brushing the sign that Red Ruby's Stop Diner. For the first time in weeks, she felt peace, small and fragile, but real. Inside, she brewed the first pot of coffee, humming under her breath. The scent filled the room, wrapping around the worn booths and sun-bleached counter like a promise. Then the bell above the door chimed. Tanner stood there again. He looked different, not just in clothes, but in spirit. His eyes were clear, his posture grounded. The swagger that once entered every room before him was gone. He carried an envelope in his hand. It shook a little as he walked toward her. Morning, he said quietly. Morning, Tanner. He set the envelope on the counter. This is for you. She frowned, wiping her hands on her apron. What is it? Something I should have done a long time ago. Inside was a cashier's check. The number was large enough to make her breath catch. Tanner, I can't take this. He raised a hand. It's not charity. It's responsibility. It covers your mother's hospital bills. I talked to the clinic. It's handled. Her throat closed. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. His voice cracked on the words. I took something from you in front of the whole world. The least I can do is give something back that actually matters." For a long time, neither spoke. The coffee pot hissed softly behind them. Elena's eyes welled with tears she hadn't let herself shed since that day. "You really did this?" He nodded. "Every dime came from selling off the car, the sponsorships, everything tied to who I used to be. Feels good to lose it." She let out a shaky laugh. "You're serious." "I've never been more serious in my life." The door opened again, and the iron vultures filled the room like a storm rolling in slow. Leather, boots, chrome, the familiar weight of them. Graves' gaze landed on the envelope, then on Tanner. "You finish what you started?" Tanner met his eyes. "Yes, sir." Diesel Jack whistled low. "Didn't think the boy had it in him." Blade smirked. "Guess miracles still happen." Ghost said nothing, but the faintest smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Elena looked at them all, then back to Tanner. "He paid for my mother's treatment," she said softly. The diner went silent. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Grave nodded once, slow, deliberate. "Then I'd say the debt's settled." But Tanner shook his head. "No, sir. That's not something you erase. It's something you live better because of." That answer made Grave grin. "Then you might turn out all right." He turned to Elena. "You keep him on, Miss Howard." She hesitated, then smiled. "If he keeps showing up, I might." The day unfolded gently after that. The bikers lingered longer than usual, telling road stories, teasing Tanner, filling the diner with laughter that reached all the way to the parking lot. When lunchtime came, Elena brought out an old Polaroid camera. "I want a picture," she said. They lined up outside, 50 bikers in black leather, the waitress who tamed them with kindness, and the young man who had learned what respect meant the hard way. The camera clicked. She held the picture as it developed, watching faces emerge from the haze. The desert wind tugged at her hair. Tanner reached out without thinking and steadied the photo before it blew away. "Keep it," she said. He shook his head. "It belongs here." He slipped it into a frame beside the register. Under it, he wrote with a marker. "Respect costs nothing, but it can change everything." When the iron vultures finally mounted their bikes to leave, Grave clasped Tanner's shoulder. "You ever find yourself lost again," he said, "listen for the thunder. We'll be out there." Tanner nodded, voice thick. "Thank you, all of you." Diesel grinned. "You earned it, kid. Don't waste it." Engines roared to life, shaking the windows. Dust rose in a halo around them as they pulled onto the highway, sunlight glinting off chrome like halos made of steel. Elena and Tanner stood side by side in the doorway, watching until the sound faded into the horizon. She turned to him. "What now?" He smiled, a small, humble smile. "I think I'm going to find out who I am without a camera." "Good place to start," she said. They went back inside. The diner smelled of coffee and redemption. And out on Route 66, where legends are born and broken, the iron vultures rode on, guardians of a waitress, witnesses to a man's rebirth, and proof that even the roughest hands can carry grace when the road calls them home. 3 months passed, and the desert, for the first time in a long time, began to feel like it could breathe again. The old Ruby's Stop diner didn't look the same anymore. The neon sign that once flickered and coughed its last light had been replaced with new lettering, smooth, gold, and proud. Second Chances Cafe. The name wasn't Elena's idea, it was Tanner's. He'd suggested it quietly one night while repainting the walls, brush in hand, his jeans streaked with white. When she asked him why, he'd said, "Because that's what this place gave both of us." Now the cafe was alive again, brighter, busier, warmer. The jukebox had been fixed, the walls carried photographs of Route 66 through the years, and the smell of cinnamon rolls replaced the faint scent of rust and coffee grounds. Every morning, Elena opened the doors at dawn, sunlight spilling across the floorboards. She'd breathe it in, the sound of the coffee pot bubbling, the clink of plates, the hum of life returning. Sometimes she'd think about that day. The spit, the silence, the roar of 50 engines rising like thunder behind her. And she'd smile. Not out of bitterness, but gratitude. Because the worst moment of her life had brought the right people to her side. Tanner still came by once in a while. Not as a worker now, but as a friend. Sometimes he'd fix a shelf or refill napkin holders. Sometimes he just sat by the window, scribbling in a worn notebook, nursing a cup of coffee until it went cold. He looked different, older, steadier. The world online had moved on from his scandal months ago, chasing its next outrage, its next villain. But Tanner hadn't gone back to it. He was building something slower, quieter, helping at a youth center in Amarillo, teaching kids how to film stories that mattered instead of pranks that hurt. Elena was proud of him, though she rarely said it aloud. Pride wasn't something you spoke, it was something you carried in the quiet. One afternoon, as a cafe filled with chatter and light, a familiar rumble rolled in from the distance. She didn't even have to look up to know. The sound of 50 Harleys had a heartbeat of its own. The Iron Vultures arrived like they always did, unannounced, unapologetic, unmissable. Their bikes lined up outside in perfect formation, the sunlight bouncing off polished chrome. Grave was the first through the door. The years and the road had carved lines in his face that no amount of rest could smooth, but his eyes still held that same quiet fire. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, glancing around. "You really did it." Elena grinned. "You helped." Diesel Jack whistled low. "Place smells like peace." "Never thought I'd say that about a diner." Blade laughed. "Yeah, peace and pie." They filled the cafe like they filled every room, too big for it, but somehow belonging. Customers turned to stare, unsure whether to be afraid or awed. But when Elena smiled and poured them coffee like she'd done 1,000 times before, the tension melted. They weren't outlaws here. They were family. After the rush died down, Graves sat by the window with Elena and Tanner. The desert stretched endlessly outside, same as always, but it didn't feel empty anymore. "You two turned pain into something that matters," Graves said. "Not many folks do that." Elena nodded softly. "It wasn't just us." Graves shrugged. "Maybe. But you built this. You made it mean something." Tanner smiled faintly. "Feels strange to think that a mistake could lead to something good. Sometimes that's how grace works," Elena said quietly. Outside, the evening light began to fall, painting the cafe in amber and shadow. Tanner reached into his bag and pulled out a framed photograph, the one they'd taken months ago. In it, 50 bikers in leather, a waitress in white, and one former influencer standing in the middle. No cameras, no filters, just truth. Below it, the words still gleamed. "Respect costs nothing, but it can change everything." He hung it on the wall near the door. When he stepped back, the reflection of the neon sign shimmered across the glass. "Second Chances Cafe." Grave rose, stretching. "You keep this place going, Miss Howard. The road needs places like this, places that remind us what we're riding for." Elena's eyes glistened. "And what's that?" He smiled small, real. "Hope." The vultures left before sunset, engines roaring one by one, their formation slicing across the desert like a living storm. People stepped out to watch them pass, mothers holding children, old men tipping hats, teenagers recording with shaky hands. And Elena stood at the window, apron dusted with flour, her reflection merging with the glow of the neon outside. She whispered to herself, "Hope rides with them." Behind her, Tanner poured 2 cups of coffee, setting one beside her on the counter. "You think they'll come back?" She smiled, eyes still on the horizon. "They always do." The sign outside buzzed in the dusk, its new light steady and sure. Second Chances Cafe. Some places are born from dreams. Others are built from the ashes of mistakes. And somewhere out there, under a sky that never forgets, the Iron Vultures roared on, carrying stories of redemption, kindness, and the woman who reminded them all that even the hardest hearts still have room for grace. The sun was already low when the Iron Vultures hit the highway again. 50 Harleys spread across the desert in 2 perfect lines, chrome flashing red in the dying light. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of fire, endless, merciless, and free. No one spoke through their radios. There was nothing left to say. The wind did the talking, whipping through leather jackets, howling past cars, carrying the faint smell of coffee and cinnamon from Second Chances Cafe. Rider Grave Lawson led the pack, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He had seen thousands of sunsets on a road, but none had ever felt like this one. Behind him rode Diesel Jack and Phantom Cruise, side by side. Blade Carter kept his place at the rear, and Ghost glided a few bikes behind Grave, silent as always. For miles they rode without music, without noise except for the thunder under their boots. Each man was lost in his own head, haunted not by violence or war this time, but by the memory of a waitress who refused to hate. Diesel broke the silence first. "Didn't think I'd see something like that again," he said over the comms. Graves' gravelly voice came through the static. "Like what?" "Forgiveness." Phantom laughed softly. "That girl had more guts than half the men I know. More grace, too," Blade added. "She didn't need a weapon. Just a heart that wouldn't quit." Grave didn't answer right away. The desert blurred past. Cacti, telephone poles, empty sky. Finally, he said, "Kindness like that, it shames a man in the best way." They all fell quiet again. When darkness swallowed the last of the light, the pack pulled off at a small rest stop. Nothing more than a gas station and a few picnic tables. The air smelled of hot asphalt and night-blooming sage. They parked in a neat line. Engines cooled. Cigarettes flared like tiny stars. Ghost leaned against his bike, staring out toward the horizon. "She's gonna be all right," he said. His voice was barely audible over the crickets. "She's stronger than the rest of us," Diesel replied. "Girl got spit on in front of the whole damn world, and she's still smiling." Grave chuckled under his breath. "That's power, brother. That's what real power looks like." Phantom kicked a pebble across the gravel. "Makes you think about all the times we could have chosen peace and didn't." Blade snorted. "Maybe we're slow learners." "Maybe," Grave said. "But we're still learning." A long-haul trucker pulled in for gas, nervous eyes darting toward the group of bikers in the shadows. Grave noticed and lifted a hand in a small wave. The man hesitated, then nodded back. Go smirked. "See that? Even strangers feel different around us now." "Elena's fault," Diesel said. "She softened us up." "No," Grave said. "She reminded us we were men before we were monsters." They all laughed quietly, the sound rolling through the night like low thunder. When they rode out again, the moon had climbed high, bathing the desert in silver. The road shimmered beneath it, a river of ghosts and memories. Grave slowed just enough for the others to hear him clearly. "Listen up, boys. We carry her story now. Every diner we stop in, every soul we meet. That's how this works. You don't protect kindness by hiding it, you spread it." Diesel grunted. "You turning preacher on us, Grave?" Grave smiled into the darkness. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of seeing good people hurt while the rest of us ride past." Phantom's voice came through, lighter this time. "Then we ride slower next time. Make sure no one gets left behind." "Damn right," Blade muttered. Ghost's low chuckle came through last. "Angels on Harleys. Never thought I'd live long enough to see that." Hours later, the lights of Dallas shimmered on the horizon like a promise. The Iron Vultures would disappear into their clubhouse soon. Another night, another stretch of road conquered, but something in them had changed. When they parked in the gravel lot, no one went inside right away. Grave stood beside his bike, staring east toward the desert they'd left behind. Diesel approached quietly. "Thinking about her?" Grave nodded. "Thinking about what comes next." He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a folded napkin. On it, written in soft pen, were 3 words in Elena's handwriting. "Ride with grace." He unfolded it carefully, smoothing it against his palm like it was made of glass. "Guess we got new orders, boys," he said, voice rough. "We keep the road clean, keep the peace, and remember the girl who reminded us what respect really means." Diesel tipped his head. "Amen to that." The others murmured their agreement. Engines flared again, a short salute to the night sky. For a moment, it almost looked like halos around each headlight, flickering rings of light in the dust. And somewhere hundreds of miles away, in a small diner with a new name and new hope, Elena Howard poured one last cup of coffee, smiling at the sound echoing faintly through her open window. The sound of brothers redeemed. 10 years later, Route 66 still carried their ghosts. The road didn't forget. It never does. Truckers still swapped the story late at night at gas stations and truck stops. About the woman who ran a diner in the middle of nowhere. About the influencer who spat, and the 50 Harleys that answered the disrespect not with fists, but with dignity. They called it the day the angels stood still. And every time someone new came through the desert stretch between Amarillo and Flagstaff, they slowed when they saw the old sign. Second Chances Cafe. The paint had faded, but the name still glowed steady in the Texas sun. Inside, things had changed, and yet somehow nothing had. The jukebox still played old country. The air still smelled like cinnamon and strong coffee. But the walls now carried more than photographs. They carried memories. There was a photo of the iron vultures still framed by the register. Underneath, someone had added a brass plate. Respect costs nothing, but it can change everything. Elena Howard was older now. Her hands still moved with that quiet grace, the same hands that once trembled under humiliation, now steady and sure from years of service and forgiveness. She'd lost her mother peacefully the year before, but not before her mom had seen the cafe thriving. The hospital bills were long paid, thanks to a boy who once thought fame was everything and later learned that redemption was. Tanner still visited. He'd traded in the hoodie for a simple denim jacket, his phone for a pen. His documentaries about kindness and the human spirit had gained quiet acclaim, the kind that mattered. He always sat at the same booth by the window, notebook open, coffee untouched until it went cold. People recognized him sometimes, the man from that video, but no one asked for autographs anymore. They just smiled because they knew the story. One afternoon, as the wind danced dust across the parking lot, the sound rolled in low, deep, familiar. 50 Harleys. The iron vultures had come home. They were older now, too. Faces more lined, hair more gray, but still riding strong. The roar of their engines filled the cafe parking lot like thunder over the plains. When they walked in, conversation stopped, just like it had a decade ago. But this time, the silence wasn't fear. It was reverence. Grave approached the counter first, pulling off his gloves. His knuckles were scarred, but his smile was warm. "Been too long, Miss Howard." Elena's eyes softened. "You boys never change." Dieseljack laughed. "We try not to." Blade smirked. "But the world sure did, huh?" They ordered coffee, black, no sugar, just like always, and filled the cafe with the sound of boots and laughter. Tanner stood quietly near the door watching. Then Grave turned toward him. "You still telling stories, kid?" "Yes, sir," Tanner said, voice steady. "Still trying to tell them, right?" Grave nodded. "Then make sure you tell this one the truth of it. Kindness ain't weakness. Tell him mercy ain't soft." Tanner smiled faintly. "Already working on it. Gonna call it the road that forgave me." The men smiled. Ghost even clapped him on the shoulder. That evening, as the sun began to die in gold and fire over the desert, Elena stepped outside to watch them leave again. They mounted their bikes in silence. Older bones, slower starts, but the same pride. The roar shook the air as they took to the highway, engines blazing, taillights burning red against the horizon. Tanner stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "You ever think about that day? Every time the sun sets," she said softly, "but not with pain anymore. With thanks." "For what?" "For what it made out of all of us." He nodded. "You think people will remember?" She smiled. "They already do. They tell our story every time they choose grace over cruelty." As night fell, the cafe lights glowed like a lantern in the desert. A trucker pulled in, stepping inside for coffee. He looked at the photo on the wall and smiled. "You knew them?" he asked. Elena wiped the counter and looked at the picture. "Yeah," she said quietly. "They were family." He nodded, took his coffee to go, and drove off into the night. The wind outside picked up again, carrying the echo of Harley engines and the faint smell of rain. And somewhere out there, beyond the black highway and the wide, endless sky, the iron vultures rode on. Not just as men, not even as legends, but as proof that even in the hardest corners of the world, kindness still roars louder than hate. And listen, if you've stayed with me all the way through this road, through every roar of the engines, so if this story found you tonight, if it stirred something quiet inside you, then don't just scroll past it. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you believe the world still needs stories like this. And share it with someone who's forgotten what mercy looks like. Click the next video on your screen to ride into another true story, another road of redemption, brotherhood, and unexpected kindness from the men the world called outlaws, but who carried the kind of honor most people forget still exists.